I'm Nicole Reynolds, and my story isn't one of fairy tale endings, but rather of breaking free from the chains that bound me for far too long. Let me tell you how I discovered that sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is walk away from blood relations that poison your soul. My father, Douglas Reynolds, sat in his luxurious leather armchair, remote control in hand, watching the stock market updates flash across the television screen. My mother, Helen Reynolds, emerged from the kitchen carrying the final dish, setting it down on the dining table with such force that the sauce splattered across the polished wood surface. I had just stepped through the front door, removing my six-figure custom-tailored coat and hanging it carefully in the closet. This house had never been a warm haven for me. Instead, it felt more like a cold courtroom where I was perpetually on trial. "Where is Jordan?" I asked, my voice carrying no warmth whatsoever. "In his room doing homework," Helen replied, with the tone of someone delivering an ultimatum. "Dinner first, then we'll talk." I knew immediately that this meal would be nothing more than an elaborate setup, a carefully orchestrated judgment session designed specifically for me. I walked into Jordan's room, where the 5-year-old boy was hunched over his desk, carefully forming letters with his pencil. When he saw me, his eyes lit up like tiny stars. "Sister," he said, running over to wrap his small arms around my legs. I gently stroked his soft hair. "Have you finished your homework?" "Almost done," he replied. "Come out and have some fruit when you're finished." Returning to the dining room, I had already composed myself, arranging my features into an expressionless mask. "If you have something to say, just say it," I told my parents, my voice steady and calm. Douglas slammed his fork down on the table with unnecessary force. "Nicole, is this how you speak to your elders?" "What attitude am I displaying?" I countered. "I simply see no need to perform theatrics while eating dinner. It's exhausting." Helen quickly jumped in to mediate, placing a serving of vegetables on my plate. "Sweetheart, listen to your mother. Everything I do is for your own good. You've met Jerry Phillips, haven't you? He's very pleased with you. His mother called me yesterday and said that even though you're divorced and have a child, their family doesn't mind." She emphasized the phrase "doesn't mind" as if it were some tremendous gift from heaven. She said as long as you agree, the dowry, house, and car are all negotiable. I set down my soup bowl. "I don't agree." 3 words, spoken with complete finality. The air in the living room instantly froze. Douglas's breathing became labored. "What right do you have to refuse?" Helen's voice became shrill. "What qualifications do you have to refuse? Nicole, look at yourself in the mirror. You're a 30-year-old woman, divorced, with baggage. Someone willing to take you should be cause for celebration, yet here you are being picky and choosy." The word baggage hit me like a sharp needle. I didn't look at Helen but glanced toward Jordan's door. It was closed, but I wasn't certain whether he had heard. "I'll say it once more. I don't agree. My affairs are not your concern." Douglas laughed coldly. "So you think you're too good for us now? You've made some money with that little company of yours, so now you don't respect us anymore?" "My company isn't little. It's worth $3 billion, I corrected him. "So what if it is? You're still just a woman and women must marry eventually. With that little bastard Jordan hanging around your neck, which decent family would want you?" "Father," I looked at him, my eyes growing cold. "Please speak with more respect." "Respect? Do you deserve it?" Douglas stood up, pointing his finger at me. "Let me tell you something, Nicole. This matter isn't up for discussion. You will marry Jerry. As for Jordan, you need to figure something out. Send him away. Send him back to his father or to a children's home. I don't care. The Reynolds family cannot have such a creature living with us. Send him away." He spoke so casually, as if discussing throwing away garbage. I slowly stood up, the chair legs scraping against the floor with a harsh sound. do you both believe that everything in my life should be arranged by you? We are your parents. We've eaten more salt than you've eaten rice, Helen declared righteously. So you think you can decide whom I marry and whether the child I'm raising stays or gets thrown away like trash? I walked to the entryway and picked up my coat. I won't be finishing dinner, and stop using the excuse of doing what's best for me to manipulate my life. I make my own decisions, including about Jordan. He is my son, and no one will take him away from me. I opened the door. Nicole, if you walk out that door, don't ever come back. Douglas roared behind me. I stopped, turned around, and looked at his face twisted with rage. Fine. Then I closed the door, shutting out their curses and shouts inside that so-called home. The next day, an unexpected visitor arrived at my office. The receptionist called nervously. Miss Nicole, there's a gentleman named Jerry who claims to be your friend. He doesn't have an appointment, but he insists on seeing you. A few minutes later, my assistant Ashley led a man into my office. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, wearing an ill-fitting suit, his hair slicked back with gel, wearing an expression that mixed nervousness with self-satisfaction. This was the quality man my mother had described, the one who supposedly didn't mind taking me on. Miss Nicole, hello, he said, extending his hand for a handshake. I didn't move, simply looked up at him. Ashley stepped forward quickly. Mr. Jerry, Miss Nicole prefers not to have physical contact with people. Please, have a seat. Jerry's hand hung awkwardly in the air before he pulled it back with embarrassment. He sat rigidly on the sofa across from my desk, his posture straight as if he were in a job interview. Miss Nicole, I hope I'm not disturbing your work by dropping by unannounced, he said, rubbing his hands together while his eyes wandered around the office, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the artwork on the walls, and the decorative pieces on my desk. His gaze held barely concealed greed and calculation. What do you want? I asked, my voice cold. He seemed taken aback by my directness. Well, yesterday I heard from your mother that you might have some misunderstandings about our situation. We don't have a situation, I interrupted. His expression changed. Nicole, don't say that. We're both adults, and your parents only want what's best for us. They want what's best for you, not for me, I said, picking up a document from my desk and beginning to read, treating him as if he were invisible. This dismissal clearly hurt him more than direct confrontation would have. Nicole! He finally dropped his pretense, changing from calling me Miss Nicole to just my first name. I admit I was married once before, but I've been divorced for a long time. My mother already explained everything to yours. I looked up, almost amused. And? So I'm good enough for you, he said urgently. You're also divorced and have a child, so we're perfectly matched. Neither of us should look down on the other. Don't worry. After we're married, your company will still be yours. I won't interfere. As for that child, you can keep him if you want, as long as he doesn't inherit any family assets. He spoke as if discussing a fair business transaction. I looked at him as if watching a clown perform. Jerry, I'm giving you 1 minute to disappear from my office. What? He was stunned. Or I'll call security, I added. That might be less dignified. His face instantly turned the color of a ripe eggplant. Nicole, don't be so ungrateful. What do you think you are? A used woman that men have discarded. If it weren't for your money, do you think I'd want you? Let me tell you, my mother said this matter has already been agreed to by your mother. You'll marry me whether you want to or not. I pressed the intercom button on my desk. Ashley, please send 2 security guards up here. My voice remained perfectly calm. Jerry panicked. You wouldn't dare. Watch me, I said, my gaze icy. Ashley appeared at the door with 2 tall security guards. Miss Nicole, please escort this gentleman out, I instructed. In the future, this person is not welcome in our company. The guards flanked Jerry on either side, gripping his arms. What are you doing? Let go of me! Nicole, you witch! Just wait! His cursing grew fainter as he was dragged down the hallway. After Ashley closed the door, the office returned to quiet. She poured me a glass of warm water. Miss Nicole, are you all right? I shook my head. Please ask the legal department head to come see me. After Ashley left, I took out my phone and called Helen. Jerry came to my company, I said without preamble. Oh, he went to see you? Helen's tone sounded guilty. Did you and Father send him? He meant well, wanting to have a proper conversation with you. I don't want to talk, I interrupted. I have 3 things to say. First, Jerry and I are impossible. Second, if any more strangers come to my company to cause trouble, don't blame me for being unkind. Third, if you continue interfering in my affairs, I'll show you what regret truly means. I hung up without giving Helen any chance to respond. I knew this was only the beginning. They wouldn't give up so easily. A war had begun, and I had never been afraid of war. 3 days later, Douglas called in the evening. His voice sounded exhausted, with carefully suppressed anger. Come home immediately. It was a command, not a request. What's the matter? Your mother is ill, he said, and my heart skipped a beat. What kind of illness? You made her sick. Her high blood pressure flared up, and now she can't get out of bed. The doctor said she needs rest and can't have any more stress. Nicole, are you determined to tear this family apart? I was silent for a few seconds. Send me the address. What address? The hospital address. There was a pause on the other end. She's not at the hospital. She's at home. High blood pressure flared up, and she's not at the hospital but at home? I laughed. Father, if you're going to put on a show, could you at least make it believable? You unfilial daughter! Your mother is in this condition, and you're still making sarcastic remarks. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said, hanging up and grabbing my car keys. Whether it was an act or not, I needed to go back to end this once and for all. Returning to that so-called home, I immediately smelled the strong scent of medicinal oil upon entering. Helen lay on the sofa with a towel covering her forehead, moaning and groaning. Douglas sat beside her, looking worried. When he saw me, he immediately stood up. So, you finally decided to come back? I ignored him and walked to the sofa. Helen opened one eye to peek at me, then quickly closed it again, moaning even louder. I reached out and removed the towel from her forehead. Stop pretending. Helen's moaning stopped abruptly. She sat up, pointing at me with a trembling hand. You heartless creature, I raised you for nothing. The $50,000 I give you each month for living expenses isn't charity, I said calmly. That little bit of money is nothing, Helen shrieked. We spent far more than that raising you. Now that you have money, you want to abandon us? I don't want to argue with you, I said, taking a bank card from my purse and placing it on the coffee table. There's $1 million on this card. Their breathing stopped as they stared at the card. The password is your birthday, I told Helen. This money settles any debt I owe you for raising me. From now on, we're even. Douglas was the first to react, picking up the card, then dropping it, as if it had burned him. What do you mean by this? Are you trying to buy us off? Treating us like beggars? Not enough? I looked at him. Then name your price. Nicole. He was shaking with rage. We are your parents. Can family affection be bought with money? I used to think it couldn't, I said, looking at their faces distorted by greed and anger. But now I think it can. At least in your case, it can. What you want is money, isn't it? You want to sell me for a good price to support you in your old age and pave the way for your precious son, Kevin? I was referring to their other child, my younger brother, who was 5 years younger than me. They had spoiled him completely since childhood. He was still in college, and his monthly allowance exceeded my executive salary. "You're talking nonsense!" Helen shouted defensively. "Whether I'm talking nonsense, you know in your hearts," I said, picking up my purse. "The card stays here. If you want it, take it. From now on, we have no relationship. You live your lives, I'll live mine. Don't interfere with each other." "If you don't want it," I paused and smiled. "That's even better. I'll save the money." I turned to leave. "Stop!" Douglas called out. I turned back to see him staring at me with bloodshot eyes. "Nicole, you think this is the end?" He laughed coldly. "You think giving us money means you can get rid of us? You think you can take that bastard child and live your carefree life? Let me tell you, it's not that easy." His eyes suddenly became vicious. "You treasure that child so much? You're willing to abandon your own parents for him? Fine. Let me see what kind of creature he really is. Tomorrow I'll arrange for DNA testing. I'll let everyone see what kind of spawn you've produced, Nicole. I'll ruin your reputation completely." DNA testing. Those 4 words struck like lightning through the oppressive air in the living room. Helen was stunned, then her face showed excited and malicious expression. Yes, DNA testing. This was the perfect weapon. Once they proved that the child was my illegitimate son, I would be completely finished. Then they could manipulate me however they wanted. They watched me, waiting for me to break down, waiting for me to beg for mercy. However, I just looked at them quietly. After a long time, I slowly nodded. "All right," I said softly, but clearly enough for them to hear. "Then let's do the test." Douglas and Helen's efficiency in destroying me had always been remarkable. When they said they would do DNA testing, they had everything arranged by the next day. The location was set at a private hospital that supposedly produced fast results and maintained confidentiality. The time was Saturday morning at 9. Friday evening, Helen called me with unprecedented gentleness in her voice. "Nicole, tomorrow morning at 9, bring Jordan with you. We'll wait for you at the hospital entrance. Also, call all your uncles, aunts, and cousins. Everyone should be there." "Oh?" I raised an eyebrow. "Is it necessary to air our dirty laundry in public?" "What dirty laundry?" Helen's voice immediately rose. "This is to clear your name. Let all your relatives see how we've treated you, so they won't say we forced you in the future." How noble it sounded. Really, they just wanted to make a big scene, humiliate me publicly, and leave me with no way out. "Fine, I understand," I agreed with surprising ease. Helen was clearly taken aback. She had probably prepared a whole arsenal of arguments to force me to comply, but it was like punching cotton. "That's settled then, and don't try any tricks," she warned uneasily. "Don't worry," I said, hanging up and looking out at the night view through my window, a cold smile playing at the corners of my mouth. They wanted to build a big stage for their drama. Well, I would show them who the real star of this performance would be. Saturday arrived, and I didn't bring Jordan. I had sent him to stay with Ashley, my most trusted assistant. Then I drove to the hospital alone. When I arrived, the hospital entrance was already crowded with people. A dense crowd of relatives filled the space. Aunts, uncles, cousins, every family member was there. They huddled together, whispering and occasionally shooting me investigative and disdainful glances. Douglas and Helen stood at the center of the crowd like two generals about to enter battle. Douglas wore a serious expression while Helen was complaining to several relatives. "I'm doing this for her own good. How can a young woman with a child of unknown origin ever get married again?" We had no choice but to use this method to force her to come to her senses. When they saw my car, the crowd fell silent for a moment. All eyes focused on me. I got out of my car and closed the door. Today, I wore a perfectly tailored black suit with 4-inch heels. My hair was immaculately styled, my makeup flawless. I wasn't here to be judged. I was here to pass judgment. "Where's Jordan? Where's that little bastard?" My second aunt was the first to speak, her voice sharp and bitter. Helen immediately approached, grabbing my hand. "Nicole, where's the child? We need the child here for the test." Her hand was cold and forceful, like a clamp. "No need," I said, gently pulling away from Helen's grip. "I've brought the samples." I held up a sealed document bag, and everyone was stunned. What did you bring?" Douglas approached, looking at me suspiciously. "Hair," I said. "Enough for testing." "Whose hair?" "Jordan's." I looked at them and added, "And yours as well." The air fell into deathly silence. Douglas and Helen's faces instantly changed color. Why do you have our hair?" Helen's voice trembled. "For testing, of course," I smiled serenely. "After all, you're the elders. You should set an example in all things, shouldn't you?" "This is ridiculous," Douglas reacted, roaring. "What tests do we need? We haven't been running around with anyone." "That's not necessarily true," I said, my voice not loud but clear enough for all the relatives to hear. "After all, Jordan's parentage has always been a mystery. Who knows whose child he really is? What if—" I drew out my words, my gaze moving meaningfully between the two of them. "What if he's related to you two?" These words exploded like a bomb in the crowd. The relatives' gazes toward Douglas and Helen instantly became strange. Douglas's face turned purple-red. Helen's lips trembled so badly she couldn't speak. "Nicole, have you lost your mind? What are you babbling about?" "Whether I'm babbling or not, a test will tell us," I said, holding up the document bag. "Unless you're afraid?" I stepped forward, getting closer to them. "You went to great lengths to gather all our relatives here because you wanted to watch a good show, didn't you? Well, I've set up the stage. Why are you suddenly afraid?" Douglas looked at me with shock, anger, and a trace of fear that I had never seen before. He wanted to say something but couldn't utter a single word. The relatives around us had already begun whispering. "What does Nicole mean? Could that child be—" "Surely not. Old Douglas and his wife. You never know. Look at their faces." Public opinion was already turning. Helen finally broke down. "We're not testing! We're not testing!" She rushed forward, trying to snatch the document bag from my hands. I easily sidestepped, avoiding her. "It's too late to say no now," I said, looking at her word by word. "Today, this test must be done. Not only will it be done, but the results will be read aloud in front of everyone." The testing center's lobby was filled with an atmosphere so tense you could wring water from it. All the relatives had arrived and sat in the waiting area chairs with various expressions. Some curious, some gloating, some worried. But mostly, there was an excited anticipation of watching drama unfold. Douglas and Helen sat in the most remote corner, their faces pale as death. Helen kept wringing her clothes with her hands, muttering under her breath. Douglas stared fixedly at the floor like a petrified statue. I handed the bag containing the samples to the staff. "I want 2 tests done," I told the doctor in the white coat. "One is between me and this child." I pointed to the samples labeled Nicole and Jordan. "The other is between these two and this child." I pointed to the samples labeled Douglas and Helen. Those were my parents' names. The doctor glanced at me, then looked at the 2 people in the distance with ashen faces, a flash of understanding in his eyes. He nodded. "With expedited processing, the results can be ready by 3 this afternoon." Good. The waiting time was torturous. For Douglas and Helen. For me, it was enjoyable. I watched them fidget, watched them avoid eye contact. watched them squirm under their relatives' probing gazes like they were sitting on pins and needles. They deserved all of this. At 2:50 in the afternoon, the announcement system called out, "Nicole, please come to window 3 to collect your report." All eyes turned to me. I stood up, straightening my suit jacket. Step by step, I walked toward the window that would determine everyone's fate. I received 2 sealed manila envelopes, thick and heavy. I didn't open them immediately, but carried them back to the center of the lobby. Everyone stood up and crowded around. "Nicole, what are the results?" my eldest aunt asked impatiently. Are they yours?" My third aunt also craned her neck. Helen leaned against the wall, barely able to stand. Douglas's fists were clenched so tight they made cracking sounds. I first picked up the document bag labeled Paternity Test Report between Nicole and Jordan. In front of everyone, I tore open the seal and pulled out several pages. I turned directly to the last page, looking at the conclusion section. Then I raised my head and surveyed the crowd. According to DNA genetic marker analysis, I cleared my throat and read in an emotionless tone, Nicole is excluded as Jordan's biological mother. As my words fell, the entire room erupted. Not hers? Then whose child is he really? I knew Nicole wasn't that kind of person. The relatives' discussions surged like a tide. Helen's face showed a flash of wild joy mixed with tremendous confusion. Not mine? Then why had I claimed him before? She couldn't understand. Douglas was also stunned, looking at me with complex emotions. I ignored their reactions. I casually handed the first report to my eldest aunt standing nearby. "You can all read it." Then I picked up the second envelope. This envelope seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. All eyes focused on it. The lobby was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I could hear Helen's labored breathing and see the bulging veins on Douglas's temples. I slowly tore open the second envelope's seal. My movements were deliberate, like conducting a sacred ceremony. I pulled out the report and again turned to the last page. The conclusion section was printed in bold, particularly conspicuous. I looked up, my gaze shooting straight at my parents. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably. According to DNA genetic marker analysis, I paused, each word seeming to be squeezed through gritted teeth. Douglas and Helen are supported as Jordan's biological parents. Dead silence. The entire lobby fell into complete silence. Time seemed to stop at that moment. Everyone was frozen as if under a spell. Their faces showed the same expression: shock, disbelief. 3 seconds later, with a boom, the crowd exploded. "What? It's old Douglas and his wife's?" My God, what on earth is going on? Jordan is their son? Then what they did before? All eyes turned from the report to those 2 parents whose faces had turned the color of ash. Helen's eyes bulged as if they might split open. She looked at me, her mouth opening and closing but unable to make any sound. Then her eyes rolled back and she collapsed backward. "Helen!" Douglas cried out, trying to catch her, but his own legs gave way and he collapsed to the floor. The scene descended into chaos, and I stood in the center of this pandemonium, holding that fate-determining report, my face wearing a cold, satisfied smile. The game was over. Helen didn't stay unconscious long, or rather, she was pretending. After several relatives frantically tried to revive her with pressure points and fanning, she slowly came to. The first thing she did upon awakening was point at me and let out a piercing wail. "You wicked daughter! You've ruined us! You've destroyed our reputation completely!" She cried while pounding the floor with her hands. Douglas sat on the ground looking like he had aged 20 years instantly, his eyes empty, mumbling to himself, "How could this be? How could this happen?" I watched this performance coldly. Embarrassing? I walked up to them, looking down at them from above. Now, you know about embarrassment? When you threw a newborn baby at me and forced me to sign a confidentiality agreement, claiming he was my son to the world, why didn't you feel embarrassed? When you called your own biological son an illegitimate bastard of unknown origin to protect your reputation and avoid family planning fines, why didn't you feel embarrassed? When you took the child support money I gave you and used it to buy cars and houses for your precious eldest son, Kevin, why didn't you feel embarrassed? And today, my voice suddenly rose, filled with years of suppressed anger. When you called all our relatives here to watch me fall from grace, why didn't you think about what would happen to you? Each of my words hit them like a heavy hammer. It also struck the heart of every relative present. So this was the truth. Their gazes toward Douglas and Helen changed from sympathy to contempt and anger. Old Douglas, is what Nicole said true? My eldest uncle spoke first, his face dark. How could you do such a thing, making your daughter raise your own biological son as her child, and hiding it for so many years? No wonder you kept pressuring Nicole to get married. You wanted to dump Jordan as a burden. My uncle was also trembling with rage. What terrible parents! The accusations came one after another. Douglas and Helen hung their heads in shame. Helen was still crying, but no one sympathized with her anymore. She crawled over crying, trying to grab my legs. Nicole, Mother was wrong. Mother knows she was wrong. Please forgive us this once. We were just confused. We can't live without you. Your brother still depends on you. I stepped back, avoiding her grasp. Forgiveness? I looked at her and laughed. Mrs. Helen, are you confused about something? I'm not a saint. I'm a creditor. What you owe me can never be repaid in this lifetime. What you owe Jordan can never be repaid, even in the next life. I took a stack of documents from my bag and threw them in front of them. This is a detailed account of every expense I incurred raising Jordan over the past 5 years, accurate to every penny, including his food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, and the time and energy costs I paid to care for him. Total, $3,780,000. Additionally, there are damages for emotional distress and reputation loss. I'll round it to $5 million for you. Pay it into my account within 3 days. Otherwise, I'll see you in court. Douglas suddenly looked up, his eyes bloodshot. You're going to sue us? Why wouldn't I asked back. Raising your son is your obligation, not mine. You forced that obligation onto me. Now I'm simply collecting what I'm owed. We don't have the money, Helen shrieked. You do, I said coldly. That downtown apartment you bought for Kevin is worth over $300,000. Plus your savings, it's enough. No, that's my son's house. He's also your son, I pointed to the DNA test report being passed around by everyone. Nicole, do you have to be so ruthless? Douglas's voice was hoarse. You were ruthless first, I said, no longer looking at them. I turned to leave this disgusting place. Stop! Douglas suddenly scrambled up from the floor like a mad beast, lunging toward me. I'll kill you, you unfilial daughter! His hand was raised in the air but never came down. Several of my male cousins and uncles rushed forward, restraining him. Old Douglas, have you lost your mind? Talk nicely. Don't get violent. Douglas continued struggling, cursing vulgarly. I didn't even bother to turn around. I walked to the main door and stopped. Oh, I forgot to tell you something, I said, my voice not loud but clear enough to reach everyone in the lobby. I've already called the police. Child abandonment should be enough to keep you busy for a while. With that, I opened the door and walked out. The sunlight outside was somewhat blinding, but I felt this was the brightest sunshine I had seen in 30 years. The police arrived faster than I had expected. I had just gotten in my car when I saw 2 police cars with flashing lights roaring up. I didn't leave immediately. I parked by the roadside, rolled down my window, and lit a cigarette. I watched the police enter the testing center. I watched the relatives scatter in chaos. I watched my so-called parents being led out by police, their faces ashen. They saw my car. Helen went crazy, trying to rush toward me, but was firmly held back by a female officer. Across the distance of several dozen meters, she hurled venomous curses at me. I could read her lips clearly. May you die a terrible death. I smiled and silently mouthed goodbye back to her. Then, I started my car and drove away in a cloud of dust. Over the next few days, my phone was bombarded with calls. Various relatives took turns calling me. Some urged me to forgive and forget where possible. Some cursed me for being ruthless and heartless, denying all family ties. Some pleaded on behalf of my parents, asking me to drop the charges at the police station. I didn't answer any of them. I blocked them all as spam. My legal team had already taken full control of the case. The processes for prosecuting them for child abandonment and pursuing $5 million in child support payments were proceeding systematically. The only call I answered was from Kevin. His voice was tearful on the other end. "Sister, please let our parents go. They know they were wrong. You can't send them to prison. Sister, drop the case. We'll pay you back. I'll sell that apartment and pay you back." He sounded more responsible than his parents, at least. "Kevin," I called his name. "Do you really think they know they were wrong?" Silence on the other end. What they did wrong wasn't abandoning their own child or deceiving me for 5 years. What they did wrong was not expecting this matter to be exposed. If today I hadn't produced that DNA test report, if I were the one being ruined and cursed by everyone, would they have shown mercy? Would they have let me go? Kevin couldn't speak. "As for that apartment, you don't need to sell it," I said. "It was rightfully mine to begin with. I'll get it back through legal channels." "Sister," he pleaded, "are you really going to be so heartless?" I'll say it again. They were heartless first. Kevin, you're an adult now. Think carefully about what kind of people your parents really are. If you still want to acknowledge me as your sister, don't plead for them anymore. I hung up. I knew my relationship with this brother might also end here, but I didn't regret it. Some relationships were wrong from the beginning. Forcing them to continue would only cause pain for everyone. The story's spread was faster than I had anticipated. Some relative had leaked it online. Female CEO forced by parents to raise brother for 5 years. Astronomical child support, real-life family drama. Various sensational headlines quickly dominated trending topics across major platforms. My identity and company information were all exposed. There were all kinds of comments online. Some cursed my parents as worse than animals. Some praised me as a clear-headed female protagonist. Of course, there were also some sanctimonious people advising me that blood is thicker than water. Family comes first. Don't go too far. I ignored all of this. Public opinion was a double-edged sword that could lift you to heaven or cast you into hell. I didn't care. What I cared about was Jordan. I brought him home. He had been staying with Ashley for the past few days, and she had taken good care of him. But I knew he must be anxious inside. When we returned home, he remained very quiet. I held him in my arms. "Jordan, there's something I want to discuss with you." He looked up at me, his big eyes full of confusion. "Don't call me sister anymore," I said. He was stunned, his little mouth trembling as if about to cry. "Why? Doesn't sister want Jordan anymore?" "No." I wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. "Because I'm not your sister." He became even more confused. "Then, are you my mommy?" he asked carefully. This had been his understanding all along. I shook my head. "I'm not your mother either." I looked into his eyes and said clearly, word by word, "Jordan, I am your biological sister. The two people who gave birth to you aren't your grandparents, they're your father and mother." I knew this was too cruel and complex for a 5-year-old child. but he had the right to know the truth. Jordan was stunned. It took him a long time to process this information. He didn't cry or make a fuss. He just quietly leaned against me. After a long while, he asked in a very small voice, "Then, why don't they want me?" My heart felt like it was being pricked by needles. I held him tighter. "They don't not want you. They made a very big mistake. But Jordan, remember this. You're not an unwanted child. You have me. From now on, I am your only family. I will protect you, love you, and raise you. As long as I'm here, no one can hurt you again." Jordan's tears finally fell. He buried his head in my arms and cried loudly, as if releasing all the grievances and anxiety of the past 5 years. I held him, gently patting his back. I knew that from today forward, both our lives would turn to a new page. This page had no place for those people. Only the two of us, sister and brother. The child abandonment case proceeded smoothly. With clear evidence and public pressure, Douglas and Helen were quickly arrested. Considering they were first-time offenders and the victim was me, the court eventually sentenced them to 1 year in prison with a 2-year suspended sentence. This meant they didn't have to go to jail immediately, but this criminal record would follow them for life. For people like them who valued face more than life itself, this was worse than killing them. The child support lawsuit was also won. The court ordered them to pay me $5 million. They couldn't produce the money, so the apartment they had bought for Kevin was forcibly auctioned. The proceeds exactly covered the payment. Thus, I completely severed all legal and financial ties with them. I thought the matter would end there. Life would return to peace. But an unexpected phone call shattered my illusion. It was Jerry calling, the blind date who had been escorted out by security. His voice sounded gloating. "Miss Nicole, I heard your family had some big trouble." "None of your business," I replied icily. "Don't say that. After all, we did have a blind date." He laughed lecherously. "You're quite famous now. The internet is full of news about you." "Get to the point." "Miss Nicole, do you think this whole thing was your parents' fault? Do you think sending them away means you won?" His words made me frown. "What do you mean?" "Nothing much," he chuckled. "Just wanted to remind you that sometimes what you see isn't the whole truth. Do you know who gave your mother the idea to set up blind dates for you and send the child away?" My heart sank. "Who?" "Do you know who anonymously sent your company's internal information to your competitors when your family was in chaos?" My breathing stopped. Last week, an important bidding project had mysteriously failed. The competitors knew our bottom line and proposal inside out. I had thought there was a mole in the company and was secretly investigating. "What are you trying to say?" My voice trembled. "I'm saying, Miss Nicole, your real enemy might not be those stupid parents of yours, but someone closest to you." Beep! 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 The phone was hung up. I gripped the phone, my palms covered in cold sweat. Someone closest to me? Kevin? Impossible. Though weak, he was fundamentally good-natured, and he was still in school, with no access to my company's core information. Who else could it be? A name suddenly popped into my mind, a name I absolutely refused to believe. My ex-husband, Benjamin. Benjamin and I had been college classmates who started a business together after graduation. The company was built through our joint efforts. Later, we peacefully separated. He took a large sum of money, left the company, and left the city. We hadn't been in contact for 3 years. Why would he do this? I immediately had Ashley investigate, check Jerry's background, check who he had contacted recently, check the background of the competitor in that failed bidding project. The results came quickly. Jerry wasn't any kind of boss. He was just an unemployed drifter who owed massive gambling debts. Recently, one of his debts had been mysteriously paid off. The competitor in the bidding project was a newly established company. The legal representative was a name I knew well, Benjamin. All the clues connected. My blood turned cold instantly. So this had all been a setup, a carefully designed trap targeting me from the very beginning. My parents and Jerry were just pawns in his hands. He first incited my greedy parents to pressure me with blind dates, and Jordan, pushing me to the center of family turmoil and exhausting me mentally. Then, while I was busy dealing with family affairs and couldn't spare attention for other matters, he stole my company's secrets and delivered a fatal blow. He wanted to destroy me. Not just my family, but also my career. How vicious, truly vicious. I closed my eyes, leaning back in my chair, feeling dizzy. I couldn't understand why. We had separated peacefully. I had given him enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life. Why would he use such malicious methods to get revenge on me? I decided to meet Benjamin face to face. I wanted to ask him directly. Ashley quickly found his current address, a high-end riverside apartment. It seemed he hadn't squandered the money I had given him. I didn't notify him in advance. I drove directly to his building. I waited in my car for a long time. At 7 in the evening, a black Porsche drove up. Benjamin got out of the car. He had lost weight and gotten darker, but looked more energetic than before, dressed in designer clothes with a Patek Philippe on his wrist. No longer the fresh-faced young entrepreneur in white shirts. He had become someone else, a businessman I completely didn't recognize. I got out of my car and called to him. Benjamin. He turned around and saw me, momentarily stunned, but then he quickly regained composure, as if my appearance was completely within his expectations. You came? He even smiled, gesturing for me to enter. Want to come up and sit? His apartment was large and tastefully decorated. Huge, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city's brilliant night view. He poured me a glass of red wine. Try this. 1982. Lafitte, your old favorite. I didn't take it. Why? I got straight to the point. He held his wine glass and walked to the window, looking out at the night view. Why? He repeated, as if asking himself. Nicole, why do you think we broke up back then? Incompatible personalities, I said. This had been our mutual conclusion at the time. He laughed and turned to look at me. Incompatible personalities? No, it was because you were too strong. You were always right, always charging forward. Beside you, I was like your shadow, your subordinate. We founded the company together, but everyone only knew CEO Nicole. Nobody knew who Benjamin was. I couldn't stand it. His voice was calm, as if telling someone else's story. So you took the money and left, I said. I thought we had settled everything between us. Settled? He shook his head, a trace of madness flashing in his eyes. How could it be settled? I took the money you graciously gave me and went abroad. I swore I would make something of myself, make you regret it. I studied frantically, worked frantically, started my own company, made lots of money. I thought when I was strong enough I could come back and make you see me again, make you admit you were wrong. But when I came back, you... His voice suddenly became pained. You had someone else's child. Do you know how devastated I was when I saw the news? Nicole, I remained faithful to you. I thought we might still have a chance. But you actually had a child with another man. I looked at him, finding it absurd. Benjamin, we broke up 3 years ago. Who I have children with has nothing to do with you. It does, he roared. I love you. I've always loved you. Everything I did was because I love you. I was jealous. I went crazy. So you orchestrated all this? I laughed coldly. You used my parents' stupidity, used Jerry's greed to get revenge on me? You wanted to destroy everything I had? I didn't want to destroy you. He approached, trying to grab my hand. I just wanted you to have nothing. Wanted you to come back to me. As long as you beg me, I can give you everything. Company, money, I can give you everything. His gaze was passionate yet obsessive. This was a twisted, suffocating kind of love. I pulled away from his hand. Benjamin, you're sick. Yes, I am sick, he laughed self-mockingly. I've been sick since the day I fell in love with you. Nicole, come back to me. Forget that child. Forget those unpleasantries. Let's start over. We're the most compatible. He reached out to me again. I looked at him like he was a stranger. I suddenly understood. He didn't love me. He loved the feeling of controlling me. He couldn't stand that I was stronger than him, couldn't stand that I had left him, so he wanted to destroy everything I had and turn me into his appendage. Impossible. I looked at him and said word by word, Benjamin, I won't let what you did to me slide. Commercial espionage, unfair competition, these charges are enough to put you away for several years. His expression finally changed. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. I gave him the coldest look I had learned from him years ago. Do you think I'm still the Nicole from 3 years ago who would soften her heart for you? You're wrong. It was you who made me into what I am today, a Nicole who is unbreakable and immune to all poisons. The war with Benjamin proved more difficult than I had anticipated. Unlike my foolish parents, he was intelligent and cunning. He had anticipated I would come after him and was fully prepared. When I sued him for commercial espionage, he countersued me for fraud in our original equity division. We became embroiled in a protracted legal battle. During that period, I practically lived at the company. Every day I met with my legal team until late night, studying the case and looking for breakthroughs. Simultaneously, I had to handle the chain reaction caused by the failed project. Appeasing clients, stabilizing morale, developing new proposals to make up for losses. I was exhausted, physically and mentally. But whenever I thought of giving up, I would think of Jordan and Benjamin's obsessed, crazy face. I couldn't lose. Once I lost, Jordan and I would be doomed forever. The breakthrough finally came through Jerry. This man was a complete gambling addict. After Benjamin gave him money, he quickly lost it all again. When he approached Benjamin for more money and was coldly refused, he harbored resentment. When my lawyer found him, he almost immediately revealed everything, including how Benjamin had found him, how he had taught him to approach my parents, and how he had promised a large sum after success. He also provided a recording he had secretly made of a phone conversation with Benjamin. This recording became the final straw that broke Benjamin. In court, when the recording was made public, Benjamin's face turned deathly pale. He had lost completely. The court ultimately found Benjamin guilty of unfair competition, sentencing him to 3 years in prison. Additionally, he was ordered to compensate my company $12 million in economic losses. His countersuit against me was dismissed. On the day of sentencing, I didn't go to court. I took Jordan to the beach. We flew kites, collected shells, and built tall castles in the sand. Jordan played happily, his laughter like silver bells. My phone rang. It was my lawyer calling. Miss Nicole, we won. I looked toward the distant horizon where the sunset was slowly descending, painting the entire sky golden. I know. My tone was calm. No imagined excitement or elation, only a weary sense of dust settling. There's one more thing, the lawyer said. Before being taken away, Benjamin asked me to give you a message. He said he wouldn't let this be the end. He also said he would return someday. I fell silent. I knew people like Benjamin would never give up easily. 3 years might just be a brief hibernation for him. He was like a venomous snake that could strike again fatally when I let my guard down. I couldn't give him that chance. I needed to cut out the roots completely. After hanging up, I dialed another number. Hello, Mr. Zhang. The voice on the other end belonged to an important business partner of mine, also someone with extensive connections. Miss Nicole, what an honor to hear from you. There's something I'd like your help with, I said, looking at Jordan playing happily in the distance, my voice turning cold. Benjamin, this person, I don't want him to have the opportunity to walk out of there standing up in 3 years. There was silence for a few seconds, then a light laugh. I understand, Miss Nicole. I'll remember this favor. I knew what that sentence meant. Benjamin's future was sealed. He would pay the most painful price for his actions in that place where the sun never shines, and I could finally let go of everything and begin a new life. After resolving all the troubles, my life finally returned to normal. Under the promotion of new projects, the company quickly emerged from its slump and developed even better than before. Jordan and I also moved to a new home in a villa district with better security and a more tranquil environment. I hired the best tutors for him and took him to learn piano and painting. I gave him all the best things I could provide, trying to compensate for his lost childhood. He was very well behaved and smart. Sometimes I even felt his maturity was heartbreaking. He never actively asked about those two people, as if Douglas and Helen were just two insignificant passers-by in his life. But he would have nightmares at night, crying, "Don't abandon me," in his dreams. Whenever this happened, I would hold him in my arms and tell him that Sister was here. Sister would never leave you.